Alrighty, today we're going to talk about constant authentication. This is what I call this idea. It's basically the password killer, right? I don't think really any of us like passwords, having to remember them, having to type them in, choosing a secure one, and all the different problems that come with them. And I think it's very important, and it's kind of time that we find the best way forward. Something that can actually properly get us past that, because there has been a lot of attempts, but we're not there yet. I have seen some interesting things in this development, which I will share, but I'm just going to jump to very quickly what this idea is, what's the concept, and then we're going to go into the problem of passwords and some solutions that have come up and why those are not really yet there, why they are not password killers. So constant authentication is the idea that this is something that's constant. It's not something that it's not a one-time prompt. It's not asking you for like a password or a one-time password or a security phrase, security question. It's something that happens every instant, right? It's constantly authorizing you. It's something that's looking for tons of parameters, and it has a confidence level that they have to reach, right? So it's kind of like the sum is greater than its parts, where you have tons of different, let's call them parameters, tons of different parameters that are each by themselves is not enough to authenticate you. But when you have multiple of them, and as that number grows larger, this confidence level actually gets closer and closer to 100%. So that's the basic concept, and we will get into that a little bit more, but I kind of want to backtrack a little bit and talk about passwords and the problem with them. So everybody, I think I could just say that, this concept of passwords and the problem, and I think most of you get it. Most of you have had issues with it. You usually find that there are kind of two areas that people fall into, or there's two ways of managing passwords. You either have one password that you use for every one of your accounts. Some people try to get that password to be a very hard one, okay, so it's a little bit better, so it's a hard one, but it's managing multiple accounts, which means the moment I hack one code, the moment I find out this one code, I'm getting to everything. And then you also have the problem of the email, which is actually another thing, but I'm going to briefly bring it in here. The problem of the email, if you can hack into someone's email, using the idea of forgot my password, you can get into tons of accounts. So that is quite a big weakness in the whole password and how we deal with things nowadays. And the other way is having a different password for every account, but either it's very easy to guess, or it's a little bit harder, and in which case you're trying to find a way to store it. Now, if you're storing it in a book or sticky notes, that's very easy for people to find and get into it. So even if the codes themselves are a bit complicated, countless times I've seen people that just have like sticky notes on top, on their iMac, or, on the wall next to them, or in a book, on the table, like in their desk drawer. Like, that's not secure. You can find them, and you're getting into all your accounts. And again, if you're getting into that email account, boom, it's like game over. So what did we start doing to solve this? So we have solutions like one password, LastPass, and even like things like Google passwords, like Chrome passwords maybe, and Apple keychain, which is like supposed to be a secure place where you can store all these things. So you have things like a keychain, the Apple keychain, that just stores all the passwords. And the good thing about it is it syncs with a lot of devices. So once you save the password onto one of your Apple devices, it syncs into the other ones. When you have things like 1Password and LastPass, which have gone beyond that, and they they sync into different accounts, and they keep track of it, but they also help you come up with difficult passwords, which actually Keychain does. But again, this is not the important part, right? So what I'm basically saying is we've now found a place to secure your passwords, and things like 1Password also help you 1Password help you do things like OTP, which is one-time password, which is usually that 6-digit code that you get sent to a mobile or an app. Now that mobile is a problem because you have things like phishing, you have ways of finding that, and as family members, friends, and I've seen this go around, a big thing was hacking into WhatsApp, and it was social engineering or social hacking. It wasn't that someone was actually hacking in. They were using the fact that you didn't understand what a one-time password was, and the fact that you kind of you trusted that if a friend was asking you for this code, that you'd give it to them, not knowing that no one else should be asking you for your code. But it's social engineering, it's social hacking. It's the idea that you're able to get past someone's defense because they're a person, because they maybe don't know how something works, or they're a bit too trusting. So it's using that against them. So any of these things that fall prey to them, anything that you have to remember, and this is another thing with passwords, like at the point of the password, because it's a one-time prompt, we kind of know what you want. So a password, when I say give me a password, I kind of know at this point I have to give them something, right? So if I found that password, this is the time to give them. But the same thing is with fingerprints, and the same thing with facial scanning. At a fingerprint, I know, okay, I'm going to be asked to prompt for the fingerprint. Now, if that device closes, or if there's a little timer on it for like a minute, or if an app is closed for a certain time period, I know, I have to give that fingerprint in. But I know I need to get that fingerprint at that point. And I usually can figure out that most people use, the index or the thumb. I've seen some funny videos where to get around this, they actually, use their pinky, which no one ever thinks about. It was like a little joke video, but it's very true. Once you kind of know what the system is looking for, you can kind of find your way to get there. So if you know that the thing is looking for a fingerprint, you wait for someone to fall asleep or someone close by. Or if you know the system's looking for a face, you just put the device in front of it and hope they open their eyes and look at it. And you get in, you know what it's asking for. As a password, you can trick someone in, you can torture someone, you can get the information because you know what that information is. But once we move to a constant authentication, where we don't actually know what the system's asking for, because the system is asking for everything at all times. The more things that I'm looking for, the more biometrics and things, and we'll get quickly into multi-factor right after this, but the more things I ask, the harder it is to trick. Because I don't know what the system's actually looking for at that point. I can't say, oh, now you want a fingerprint? No. Now I want all your fingerprints, and I want your iris, and I want your face, and I want your hair, and I want the colors, and I want the 3D scan, and I want your shirt, and I want your voice, and I want the way you sit. All these different things are tons and tons of parameters. And we'll get into what does that even mean, the way you sit? If I have time, I want to get into that. But very quickly, I'm going to briefly touch on multi-factor or two-factor authentication, as some people see them as. What was this? This was the idea that if you go beyond the password is something that you know, right? So the next, if we add more factors to it, to this authentication, we'll make it stronger, which is the right approach. The problem is it usually stops at 2 or 3. And usually in those things, it keeps... Okay, let's quickly go into it. So the first authentication in the multi-factor is what you know, right? That is usually a password. The next one is something that you have, right? So that is usually a phone on you. So that's why when they send you an SMS, they assume that you have a phone on you. Or you have the apps that do it. So whether the app is like a Google Authenticator, or it's built into your 1Password, or it's another app to authenticate you, that's usually saying, okay, this is on a device you own, and probably to get into that device, that's also got its own authentication to get into it. So it's something you have, and then the third one is something that you are. That is usually the biometrics, right? So a lot of these apps that use two-factor authentication, they have the password and also the email. Then they go, okay, give us your one-time password that is on a device that you have. And then usually the newer devices will be secured by biometrics, which is what you are. So that usually does get you all three. I'm not going to have a lot of time in this video, but I did see that another app that works very similar to Google, and I saw this a couple of years ago, and I thought this was a great direction. And what it was doing was Google, in some of the apps you can have, is when you try sign in, it actually sends you a quick prompt on, let's say Gmail or your Google app, and says, was this you? And you can click yes, this was me, or no. So it's a quick yes or no. So there was an app or a website that kind of did this, but it did this over tons of logins. And their goal, and I don't think they reached it, but their goal is that every single account that you wanted to get into, you didn't make a password and an email. You stored it in one account. And so when you wanted to get into an account that was connected to this, all you did is you put your email. It would send the prompt to this app or website or an app on your phone. And when you would open this app, usually using biometrics or something else, it would just ask you to tick it. And it would say someone's trying to sign in with whatever this account was, you would tick it and you would get in. Similar to the Gmail, but kind of bigger than that. I do want to get into, I don't have time in this video, and if you guys want, I will continue this video, but there are lots of ideas in where the biometrics and what are different type of biometrics, and some really cool research from MIT and other places of different biometrics that I guarantee you that not all of you have ever heard of, and they're really, really cool things that are being worked on. And put that into multi-factor, and this thing, constant authentication, and this thing will get rid of passwords. But I have to end the video now, so I'm going to say goodnight, and I'll see you guys in the future.